Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the most fundamental story there is, the story of you. I mean, have you ever really thought about it? How does a single, tiny cell become, well, you? It's this incredible journey that every single one of us has taken. From a start so small you can't even see it, to a fully formed person. How does that first cell get the instructions to build a heart, a brain? Everything. That's what we're going to unpack today. Okay, so let's get right into it. Where does this whole story begin? Well, it all kicks off with a process called reproduction. You can think of it as life's most basic strategy for, making more life. And to really get a handle on our own story, we first need to zoom out a little. Turns out, in the animal kingdom, there are basically two main game plans for creating new life. All right, so on one side, you've got asexual reproduction. Think of it like nature's copy-paste function. A single parent just makes a clone of itself. But that's not our story. We take the second path, sexual reproduction. And this one is all about mixing things up, combining the genetic code from two different parents to create someone totally, completely new. And for some organisms, like this amoeba here, that first path is incredibly straightforward. The parent cell just copies its nucleus, the main control center, and then splits right down the middle. And boom, just like that, you have two. It's a really elegant process called binary fission. But again, our story isn't about making copies. It's about creating something brand new. And that happens through sexual reproduction, which kicks off at the very moment two super specialized cells, one from a male and one from a female, come together and become one. So the big question is, how does that one fusion event create the entire blueprint for a human being? Well, it all comes down to the unique building blocks that each parent contributes. And here are those building blocks. We have the male gamete, which is the sperm, and the female gamete, known as the ovum or egg. And it's really a numbers game, Males produce millions upon millions of sperm, while females usually release just one mature egg each month. So when just one of those millions of sperm manages to fuse with that single egg, that is the moment. That's fertilization. And what they create together is the very first cell of a brand new person. It's called a zygote. I mean, just pause and think about that. This one single cell, the zygote, is the beginning of everything. It holds the complete instruction manual, all the genetic code needed to build an entire person, with half the instructions coming from the mother and the other half from the father. Okay, so from this point on, that one cell embarks on this absolutely incredible transformation. It starts dividing and dividing and dividing again, forming this tiny ball of cells that makes its way to the uterus, where it embeds in the wall to kick off its 9-month journey. And this journey happens in distinct stages. First, you have the zygote, that single fertilized cell. As it keeps dividing, it becomes what we call an embryo. This is where all the basic foundations for organs get laid down. And then, finally, it develops into a fetus. And at this point, you can actually see identifiable parts like hands, legs, a head. It's unmistakably the shape of a tiny human. Now, because all this development happens inside the mother's body, it makes us humans viviparous. Just like cows or dogs, we give birth to live young. This is totally different from oviparous animals, like a chicken or a frog. Their babies develop outside the mother's body, safe inside an egg. But hey, the story doesn't just stop at birth, right? Not even close. The next huge chapter is this period of really dramatic change that gets the body ready for adulthood and, eventually, for continuing this very same cycle of life. And we call this chapter adolescence. Yeah, it's that transformative and, let's be honest, sometimes super awkward period where your body goes through a massive upgrade. This whole process is called puberty, and it's what gets you ready for the adult world. Generally, this whole transformation happens during your teenage years. Of course, everyone's on a slightly different schedule, but we're talking roughly from age 11 to 19. That's the main window for this huge shift from being a kid to being an adult. And wow, puberty brings on a ton of changes. You get that sudden growth spurt where it feels like you're growing overnight. Your whole body shape changes. Boys' shoulders get broader, girls' hips widen. And of course, the voice changes, especially for boys when their Adam's apple becomes more prominent. And all of this super fast growth can feel, well, weird. If you've ever felt like your arms or legs are too long for your body, it's because they probably were for a little while. It's a totally normal part of the process. Different parts of your body just grow at different speeds. And what's really interesting, as you can see here, is that this growth spurt hits at different times. Girls often get a bit of a head start, starting their big growth spurt maybe a year or two earlier than boys. But by about age 18, most of us have reached our full adult height. So what's the command center for all this change? What's pulling the strings? It all comes down to these powerful chemical messengers called hormones. For males, the testes start pumping out testosterone, and for females, the ovaries start producing estrogen. These are the hormones that orchestrate this whole transformation. And that brings our entire story full circle. See, all those changes that happen during adolescence, they're the exact things that give the body the ability to reproduce, making it possible to start this incredible cycle all over again with a new generation. When you think about it, it's this amazing, unbroken chain that stretches back through all of human history. This journey from one cell to a fully grown person is literally how our species keeps its story going, from one generation to the next. It really is a remarkable story, isn't it? One that's written in the language of our DNA. From that microscopic beginning to the incredible complexity of a human being, every single step is just mind-blowing. So it leaves us with one final thought. What part of this whole journey amazes you the most? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.